Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to our Tuesday night segment of Divine Femininity United. I am your girl, Dr. Bianca Miss B. Lee, and we are here reading collectively through the wonderful, magnificent, phenomenal book, Power versus Force: The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior, written by the incomparable David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. This book has been amazing, 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 you all, and we have made our way all the way through to chapter 20. Is entitled The Evolution of Consciousness. Mm. The Evolution of Consciousness. I love, 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 love this book, you all. As you all know, on Tuesday nights, I do not like to piddle paddle. I do not like to linger. I like to jump in because it is on the East Coast. It's 8 p.m. And I don't like to isolate you all from your day. This is your day. That's your time. And you get to determine how you spend it. I don't want to keep up too much of your time. Okay. So we like to jump right on in. At any point when you hear anything and if it resonates with you, jumps out to you, speaks to you, whatever the case, use the chat, use the comment section, share with us what your thoughts are. I'm transferring and alternating between screens, but I will see your message, I will see your comment, I will see your thought, and I will read it for you. I will give voice to your words, okay? But if not, and you just want to listen and receive, then feel free to do so. We're airing live, you all, on multiple platforms. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Clubhouse, okay? Alrighty. And I thank you all, those who are listening in now, those who will listen in the future, replayers, thank you, thank you, thank you for your energy, for your being, for your exchange of your essence with me in this now, okay? Thank you so much. We are reading chapter 20, The Evolution of Consciousness. Thousands of calculations and innumerable calibrations drawn from kinesiologic testing of individuals and from historic analysis indicate the average advance in the level of consciousness throughout the global population is little more than 5 points during a lifetime. Apparently, even though one undergoes untold millions of individual experiences in one's life, only a few lessons are usually ever learned. The attainment of wisdom is slow and painful, and few are willing to relinquish familiar views, even if they're inaccurate. Resistance to change or growth is considerable. It would seem that most people would rather die than alter those belief systems that confine them to lower levels of consciousness. If this is true, then what's the prognosis for the human condition? Is a 5 point advance per generation all that can be expected? This troubling question deserves our attention. I agree, my goodness. In the first place, as we can observe from the distribution of levels of consciousness throughout the world population, great masses of our species are at the low end of the evolutionary scale, still relying on force to compensate for their actual powerlessness. More advanced, individual cultures exhibit more variation. For example, the Japanese capitalized on the lessons of World War II and collectively made a major jump in their evolution. On the other hand, America's level of consciousness sank at a result as a result of the Vietnam War. What was actually learned as yet remains to be seen. Unfortunately, our entertainment tends to trade on emotional sensationalism and therefore gravitates toward violence. Murder is nightly family fare on television. It is. Our children grow up on a steady mental diet of it. Americans have learned to enjoy the gruesome, and the more bizarre, the better. Cruelty and havoc are becoming the status quo. In 1993, an initiative requiring children to have parental permission to carry guns failed in the city of Phoenix, Arizona. Soon after, the news reported the handgun killing of 2.5-year-old toddler by another child, who was just 3 years old himself. It seems that society institutionalizes certain self propagating levels of consciousness that consequently become an ingrained characteristic of various social strata. Nonetheless, there remains free choice and therefore a considerable potential for individual mobility and variety of experience, which makes alternative options available. From our study of advanced theoretical physics, nonlinear dynamics, and the nature of nonlinear equations, it's clear that, at least in theory, choice is not only possible, but inevitable. It's out of regularity that irregularity appears. All attractor patterns are connected to each other, if only by a single strand, so to speak. But how exactly do transformational choices occur? What leads to them? What makes them and why? This is a subject where few principles have been defined. Growth and development are irregular and nonlinear. Practically nothing is known about the essential nature of growth, or any process in nature for that matter. No one has ever studied the nature of life itself, only its images and consequences. There simply hasn't been adequate mathematics to comprehend it. Linear differential equations brought to us approximations, but not to essence. When we bear witness to the simple sprouting of a bud or a leaf, incredible wonders are performed through an intrinsic wizardry that we really have no understanding of whatsoever. As is commonly observed, growth, both individual and collective, can take place either slowly or suddenly. It isn't limited by restraints, but by tendencies. Innumerable options are open to everyone all the time. That's true. But they're relatively infrequently chosen. It's so true. Because people want the context that would make such options attractive. One's range of choice is ordinarily limited only by one's vision. Ooh, let me say that again. One's range of choice is ordinarily limited only by one's vision. Context, value, and meaning are merely different terms for a subtle web of energy patterns within an overall organizing attractor energy field, which is itself only part of a still larger one, and so on, in an infinite continuum throughout the universe, until it eventually includes the total field of consciousness itself. While the sheer magnitude of such a complex of energy patterns seems beyond human cognizance, it's totally is nonetheless comprehended by individuals whose consciousness reaches the 600 to 700 range, which gives us some idea of the enormous capacity for understanding possessed by those with advanced consciousness. The most important element in facilitating an upward movement in consciousness is an attitude of willingness, which opens up the mind through new means of appraisal to the possible validity of new hypotheses. In other words, it opens up your mind to be willing to learn more outside of only what you know. Although motives for change are as multitudinous as the innumerable facets of the human condition, they're most often found to arise spontaneously when the mind is challenged in the face of a puzzle or paradox. In fact, certain disciplines, such as Zen, deliberately create such an impasse in order to finesse a leap of awareness. On our scale of consciousness, there are two critical points that allow for major advancement. The first is at 200, the initial level of empowerment. Here, the willingness to stop blaming and accept responsibility for one's own actions, feelings, and beliefs arises. As long as cause and responsibility are projected outside of oneself, one will remain in the powerless mode of victimhood. It's so true. The second is at the 500 level, which is reached by accepting love and non-judgmental forgiveness as a lifestyle, exercising unconditional kindness to all persons, things, and events without exception. In 12-step recovery programs, it's said that there are no justified resentments. That's true. Even if somebody did you wrong, you're still free to choose your response and let resentment go. Wow, 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 wow. Listen, I'm going to read that again. In 12-step recovery groups, it's said that there are no justified resentments. There are no justified resentments. Even if someone did you wrong, you are still free to choose your response and let resentment go. Mm, 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 mm. So simple, so powerful, yet so few chosen. Once one makes this commitment, he begins to experience a different, more benign world as his perceptions evolve. It's so true, man. Next section, holograms and perceptions. It's initially very challenging to understand that attitudes can alter the world one experiences, and that there are numerous valid ways of experiencing it. But as in viewing a hologram, what you see depends completely on the position that you view it from. So, what position then is reality? In fact, this is a holographic universe. It is. Each point of view reflects a position that's defined by the viewer's unique level of consciousness. If you're on this side of the hologram, your perception will hardly agree with that of the observer on the other side. He must be crazy, is a common reaction to such wide discrepancies. And even though it's been said many times that the world is made of mirrors, it just isn't true. The world is a set of holograms in limitless dimensions that seem to be fixed in time and place and offer only a single reflection. Yes, of one, of all. Ooh, my goodness. Auditory experience, for example, is part of a holographic series of attractor fields of all of the sounds that ever were. Man. The physical world is tactile too. It has texture, color, dimension, and spatial relationships, such as a position and a shape. Again, each of these is a part of an underlying sequence that, with all of the other qualities, goes back in time to the original source of its existence, which is now. There's only now. Man, man. Ooh, you all. I hope y'all getting this. Jeez. A hologram, we might say, is in and of itself a process. There's nothing fixed in a three-dimensional hologram. And what then of a four-dimensional hologram? It would include all possible instances of itself simultaneously. That's true. To change seems to be to move from through time. But if time itself is transcended, then there's no such thing as sequence. If all is now, there's nothing to follow from here to there. Each hologram is in itself an evolutionary projection from an endless nonlinear matrix of events that aren't causally related, but instead synchronous. Synchronous. Then at the perceptive level of 600 to 700, what was, what is, and what will be are comprehended wordlessly within the complete, simultaneously holographic possibility. The term indescribable here begins to take meaning. It's so true. Because how do you form in words in a description of both the past, the present, and the future all in now? Happening in the now, like in this moment, all is, all that was, that is, and that will be is already here, is now. It's complete, happening simultaneously. It's all present in the now. Wow, man. Whew, how true is this? Is when you can envision, if you can envision right now, which I take a lot of my clients and I've taken some family members through this exercise. I have them to close their eyes and I have them to just breathe in deep, release out your mouth, just, to relax and come into the now, come into the now, still the mind, still the thoughts, release the body, relax the body. And then I have them to take me on a tour through their dream home. Take me on a tour. And they will literally walk me from room to room, describe the furniture, the decor, the color scheme. They will take me to their kitchen, They will open their refrigerator and tell me what's in it. They will open their cabinets and tell me what's in that. They'll take me to their bedrooms and show me what the layout is. All of this description has never occurred in their fruition. So they think. But if you've never seen it and you've never experienced it, then how are you describing it? That right there validates what we just read. What was, what is, and what is to come is all in the now. The complete is already here simultaneously. Ah, my goodness, man. I hope you all are picking up what is being put down. Okay, here we go. Let's attempt to better understand all of this through a concrete example. Imagine a bum on a street corner. I don't like that word, but imagine an unhoused individual on the street corner. In an upscale neighborhood stands an old man in tattered clothes, alone and leaning against the corner of an elegant brownstone. Look at him from the perspective of various levels of consciousness and note the differences in how he appears to different people and viewpoints. Here we go. From the bottom of the scale, at a level of 20, which is shame, the unhoused person is seen to be dirty, disgusting, and disgraceful. From level 30, which is the level of guilt, he'd be blamed for his condition. He deserves what he gets. He's probably a lazy welfare cheat. At 50, at hopelessness, his plight would appear desperate, a damning piece of evidence to prove that society can't do anything about homelessness. At 75, the level of grief, the old man looks tragic, friendless, and forlorn. At a conscious level of 100, which is the level of fear, we might see the unhoused person as threatening, a social menace. Perhaps we should call the police before he commits some crime. At 125, the level of desire, he might represent a frustrating problem. Why doesn't someone do something? At level 150, at the level of anger, the old man might look like he could be violent. Or, on the other hand, one could be furious that such horrible conditions exist in our country today. At 175, the level of pride, he would be seen as embarrassment or as lacking the self-respect to better himself. At 200, the level of courage, we might be motivated to wonder if there is a local homeless shelter. All he needs is a job and a place to live. At 250, the level of neutrality, the unhoused person looks okay, maybe even interesting. Live and let live, we might say. After all, he's not hurting anyone. At 310, the level of willingness, we might decide to go down and see what we can do to cheer up that fellow on the corner. Maybe we'd be motivated to volunteer some time at the local shelter. At 350, at acceptance, the man on the corner appears intriguing. He probably has an interesting story to tell. He's where he is for reasons we may never understand. At level 400, the level of reason, he's a symptom of the current economic and social malice, or perhaps a good subject for in-depth psychological study. At the higher levels, the old man begins to look not only interesting, but friendly and then lovable. Perhaps we then be able to see that he is, in fact, one who had transcended social limits and gone free. A joyful old man with the wisdom of age in his face and the serenity that comes from indifference to material things. At 600, the level of peace, he's revealed as our own self in a temporary expression. When approached, the homeless man responds to these different levels of consciousness would vary with them. With some, he'd feel secure. With others, frightened or dejected. Some would make him angry. Others would delight him. Some he'd avoid. Others he'd greet with pleasure. And so it's said that we meet what we mirror. We meet what we mirror. So much for the manner in which our level of consciousness, that is, the world we encounter as passive observers, decides what we see. It's true that we'll react to things in a fashion predicated by the level that we perceive them from. That is to say, external events may define conditions, but they don't determine the consciousness levels of human response. To illustrate this point, let's take a look at our current penal system. Come on. Placed in an identical and extremely stressful environment, different inmates react in ways that vary extraordinarily according to where they're coming from. Prisoners whose consciousness is at the lowest end of the scale sometimes attempt suicide in jail. Others become psychotic and delusional with guilt. Some fall into despondency, go mute, stop eating. Still others sit and head in hands, trying to hide incipient tears of grief. A common expression is fear, which is manifested either through paranoid defensiveness or blatant psychophancy. Other prisoners react with a great degree of violent and assaultive rage. Pride is everywhere in the form of macho bragging and dominance. In contrast, some inmates find the courage to face the truth of why they're incarcerated and begin to look at their lives honestly. And there are always those who just roll with the punches and try to get some reading done. At the level of acceptance, we see prisoners who seek out help and join support groups. It isn't unusual for an inmate to take a new interest in learning, perhaps by studying in the prison library or even becoming a jailhouse lawyer. Some of history's most influential books were written behind bars. A few prisoners will go through a transformation of consciousness and become loving and generous caregivers to their fellow inmates. And it's not unheard of for a prisoner aligned with higher energy fields to grow deeply spiritual or even to actively pursue enlightenment. Some even become saintly. How we react depends on the world we're reacting to. Who we become, as well as what we see, is determined by perception, which can be said simply to create the world. It's interesting to know that the further down the scale of consciousness a person is, the harder it is for him to maintain eye contact. Wow. At the low end, visual contact is avoided altogether. In contrast, as we go up the scale, the ability to hold prolonged and finally almost endless gazes at great depth becomes characteristic. We're all familiar with the guarded glance of guilt, yep, the glare of hostility, and the unblinking open-eyedness of innocence. Remember that power and perception go hand in hand. Next section, the mechanics of perception. How then does perception work? What are its mechanics? That perception is subjectively unique is evidenced by common observation. We're all familiar with the example of a mock trial in law school, wherein different witnesses relate wildly divergent accounts of a same event. The mechanism of perception is like a movie theater where the projector is consciousness itself. The forms on the film are the attractor energy patterns, and the moving pictures on the screen are the world that we perceive and call reality. We could say that the configurations on the film are the ABC attractor fields in mind, and the moving picture on the screen is the A to B to C observed as the phenomenal world. This schema provides a model for a better understanding of the nature of causality, which occurs on the level of the film, not the level of the screen. Because the world routinely applies its efforts on the screen of life at the level of the A to B to C, these endeavors are ineffectual and costly. Causality stems from the attractor patterns of levels of energy, the ABCs of the configurations imprinted on the film of mind, illuminated by consciousness. The nature of the stream of consciousness, its patterns of thought, perception, feeling, and memory, is the consequence of entrainment of the attractor energy fields that dominate. Keep in mind that this domination is voluntary. It isn't imposed, but is the outcome of one's own choices, beliefs, and goals. By consensus, we synchronize with a field pattern that implies specific styles of processing and influences all of our decisions according to its accompanying set of values and meanings. What appears as an important and exciting piece of information from the perceptive of one level might be boring or even repulsive at another level. Truth is subjective, and that can be frightening. The current evolution and elevation of science to the status of infallible oracle is an expression of our insecure compulsion to feel that there's some kind of a measurable, universally predictable, objective world out there that we can rely upon. But in transcending the emotional distortions of perception, that's real. In transcending the emotional distortions of perception, science itself creates yet another conceptual distortion due to the limitations of its parameters. It's so true. Out of necessity, science must remove data from its context in order to study it. But in the end, it's only the context that gives the data itself its whole significance or value. The eventual discovery arrived at by advanced theoretical physics can be reached from any organized field of human knowledge. The more detailed one's analysis of the structure of the out there is, the more one discovers that what one is examining is, in fact, the nature of the intrinsic process of consciousness in here, inside of self. There's nothing out there other than consciousness itself. The habitual tendency to believe otherwise is our fundamental illusion, a vanity of the human mind, which tends always to view its transitory subject as mine. Exactly. My view, my studies, my this, my that. Is so true. And then we hold true to it too. We hold it as if what we know is the only thing to know. It's so crazy. Our society loves a category, a box, a measurement, a gauge, a label, a title. Oh my word. It's like if we don't have those things, then well, how do we know? You just simply do. This whole process, this whole experience is just it's an experience of awareness. It's just a life of awareness. The more you are aware of, the more expanded and more evolved consciously you become. It's just a life of awarenesses. That's it. It's not for you to have to jot down and tally, and because it will be wrong. Just like with the science, like he said, the science is inaccurate as well. Look at NASA, who's measuring the planets and measuring this and measuring that. Their data is daily wrong. They can calculate something now, and in the next hour, it'll be different. So what are we even doing? Come on now. We're trying to box something in that cannot be contained. It cannot be contained. It's limitless. It's infinite. How can you box in infinity? Make it make sense. Same with self. Same with self. You are infinite. How can you box in infinity? How can you box yourself in? How can you box your talent, your skill? How can you box any of you in? Man, objectively, it can be seen that thoughts really belong to the consciousness of the world. The individual mind merely processes them in new combinations and permutations. What are seen to be truly original thoughts appear only through the medium of genius and are invariably felt by their authors to be a gift found or given, not self-created. Come on. So the self-made anything. Come on now. It may be the case that we're each unique, as no two snowflakes are alike. However, we're still just snowflakes. Come on. We all inherit the human condition of mind in our unasked for birth. To transcend the limitations of the mind, it's necessary to dethrone it from its tyranny as sole arbiter of reality. That's it. Unlearn, deprogram. Come on, decondition, uncondition yourself. The vain mind confers its imprint of authenticity on the movie of life it happens to be viewing. The mind's very nature is to convince us that its unique view of experience is the genuine article. Come on. Each individual secretly feels that his particular experience of the world is accurate. Exactly. In our discussion of the levels of consciousness, we noted that one of the downsides of pride is denial. Come on, argumentative. My goodness, debates are centered around this, okay? Every mind engages in denial in order to protect the correctness. This begets the fixity and resistance to change that prevents the average consciousness from advancing much more than 5 points in the lifetime. That is crazy, you all, that we only advance in consciousness up to 5 points, all due to us holding on to preconditioning, us holding on to pre-programming, us holding on to our own beliefs. Come on. Oh my goodness, man. I refuse. I am not going to be this person. I promise you. 5 points? Absolutely not. Great leaps in levels of consciousness are always preceded by surrender of the illusion that I know. Oh my God. That I know. Oh, I know this and I know that and I know and I know and I know. Oh my goodness. Great leaps in levels of consciousness are always preceded by surrender of the illusion that I know. Frequently, the only way one can reach this willingness to change is when one hits bottom. That is, by running out a course of action to its end in the defeat of a futile belief system. Light can't enter a closed box. Light can't enter a closed box. The upside of catastrophe can be an opening to a higher level of awareness. If life is viewed as a teacher, then it becomes just that. But unless we become humble, unless we become humble and transform them into gateways to growth and development, the pain life lessons that we deal ourselves are wasted. We witness, observe, and record apparent possessions, of experience. But even in awareness itself, nothing actually happens. Awareness merely registers what's being experienced. That's it. That's all. It has no effect on it. Awareness is the all encompassing attractor field of unlimited power, identical with life itself. And there's nothing the mind believes that isn't erroneous at a higher level of awareness. The mind identifies with its content. It's true. It takes credit and blame for what it receives. For it would be humbling to the mind's vanity to admit that the only thing it's doing is experiencing. And in fact, only experiencing. Yeah. The mind doesn't even experience the world, just sensory reports of it. That's true. Even brilliant thoughts and deepest feelings are only experience. Ultimately, we have but one function: to experience. Mm. The major limitation of consciousness is its innocence. Consciousness is gullible. It believes everything it hears. Consciousness is like hardware that our own consciousness, that hardware, I apologize, that will play back any software that's put into it. We never lose the innocence of our own consciousness. It persists, naive and trusting, like an impressionable child. Its only guardian is a discerning awareness that scrutinizes the incoming program. Over the ages, it's been noted that merely observing the mind tends to increase one's level of consciousness. A mind that's being watched becomes more humble and begins to relinquish its claims to omniscience. A growth in awareness can then take place. With humility comes the capacity to laugh at oneself and increasingly be less the victim of the mind and more its master. From thinking that we are our minds, we begin to see that we have minds, and that it's the mind that has thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and opinions. Eventually, we may arrive at the insight that all of our thoughts are merely borrowed from the great database of consciousness and were never really our own. Prevailing thought systems are received, absorbed, identified with, and in due time replaced by new ideas that we have become fashionable to us, that have become fashionable to us. As we place less value on such passing notions, they lose their capacity to dominate us, and we experience progressive freedom of, as well as from, the mind. This, in turn, ripens into a new source of pleasure. Fittingly, the pleasure of existence itself matures as one ascends the scale of consciousness. My goodness. My goodness, you all. Oh, I loved it. I loved every bit of it. I loved every single bit of it. That was good. My God. Listen, that was the end of that chapter, chapter 20. The next chapter is chapter 21, and that is entitled The Study of Pure Consciousness. We just finished reading The Evolution of Consciousness, okay? The Study of Pure Consciousness is what we're going to be reading together on Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? If you do not have the book, I say this all the time, email me, inbox me, reach out to me. I will get the book to you. It is free of charge to you, okay? It's an ebook PDF version. It is free of charge to you. If you would like to sow a seed, you are more than welcome to do so. It is not required, but it is welcomed, and we are grateful for it because it does cost us to do what we do. Okay, but it is not required. All right. So get the book. I'm telling you, even if you don't read it alongside me and us, then read it for yourself. Okay. You can email me at info@biancamissblee.com. All right. Visit my website, you all, on Clubhouse. It's right above my head. On everywhere else, other platforms, it is on the screen or in the captions as well. Okay. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and Clubhouse, and LinkedIn, everywhere, and Twitter, everywhere. Dr. Bianca Miss Lee, okay? You all, I told you, I don't want to keep you long. I try not to keep you long because your evenings, your days, your time belongs to you, okay? Alrighty, listen, until Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I love you. I mean it. There's absolutely positively nothing you can do about it. Don't you even try it, okay? We'll see you back here at Divine Femininity United. Peace.